Hi, everybody, and this is Burke Lyle, and welcome to this edition of the Super Bowl. So, the Super Bowl is a little bit more than 48 hours away. I'm recording this on the 31st of January, at about 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And it was hard to believe that it's two things. One, that's the end of January, being the last day of January, and two, this NFL season is almost over. I mean, the season really has flown by. I mean, again, just from talking about, right around this time where I started this YouTube channel, it's basically right at the beginning of the season. And I talked about the season, just a lot of stories happened throughout the season. I mean, just thinking back to the beginning of the season with the Antonio Brown Raiders saga, to then going to the Patriots, kind of that in week one, to now recent news of Antonio Brown, I think just got arrested. So just is kind of in the news again, a lot has been going on for Antonio Brown this year, and then getting cut by the Patriots. So those are some storylines. To then just in this playoffs alone, like what happened during the season, like also what happened this NFL season. Even though it has nothing to do with the NFL, I got to see the Nationals win the World Series kind of right in the middle of the season. So when I think about the beginning points, quarter mark, kind of middle of the season, seeing the Nationals win, to then just kind of doing it. I can't tell you how many NFL games I watched this season. From that bear, just because on an average week I probably watch 3 or 4 games a week. I may or may not watch Thursday night depending on the matchup. I usually watch Monday night and Sunday night, and then usually the premier 4 o'clock game, 1 o'clock varies. So I spent so many Sundays watching football, which really for about 20 straight weeks from about the first weekend, second weekend of September, right after Labor Day, all the way until the conference championship game, right around Martin Luther King Day. That's about 20 straight weeks, Sundays where there is NFL football, and I just can't believe it's the end of the season. It's been a fun season. A lot has happened. So I want to say this at the beginning of the year. I did my predictions. I would have never thought the 49ers would have been in the Super Bowl. I did not think that was possible. Well, here they are. The Chiefs, I did. Well, no. I'm trying to remember. It was Patriots and Saints. So no, I did not think the Chiefs were going to make it to the Super Bowl. Even, and then I go back to when I made my going into the playoffs, basically throughout December or January, going into the playoffs, I thought it would be the Ravens in the Super Bowl. And on the other side, I thought it would be the Saints. I thought it would be Saints Ravens. That the Saints got eliminated all the way back all the way back in the wild card round, while the Ravens got eliminated by the Titans. So a lot of upsets happened in this playoffs. We had the run of the Titans all the way to the conference championship game, and then here we are with the 49ers. So in this episode, I just want to share a few stories I read from The Athletic. I found 3 on Wednesday that I really want to share that I think could be fascinating to share. I'll spend a few minutes on each one, and then I will talk about kind of go through the conference championship games, kind of what I saw. No, it will not be like previously. It will be a little bit different, and then we will go through. It's not going to be as long, and then we'll just kind of preview the Super Bowl. So this episode, I don't anticipate will be as long as the other ones. Kind of when I previewed going into the divisional round and the conference championship game, I believe this episode will be shorter. So before I get started, I just want to look around. This is the Super Bowl. So what is the state of each town's sports team? Well, Kansas City, that's easy. The Chiefs are getting ready to win the Super Bowl. Or on the other side, you have the Royals, who are terrible. Have lost 100 games back-to-back years. It'll be a while before they're good again. While the Royals did win the World Series in 2015. So that's what Kansas City's looking for, another championship. It's a small sports town. You kind of want to see them win a championship. And then yes, there are the Kansas Jayhawks, but that's different. That's a little bit different, I think. at least the Jayhawks in basketball. So for the San Francisco Bay Area, I mean, where do you want to go? Do you want to go Oakland, San Francisco? Since obviously they just lost the Raiders, so that's a loss. But you still have the 49ers who are getting ready to win a Super Bowl. I mean, they've bounced around. And then on the other side, yeah, obviously the Warriors won 3 championships within a very recent time frame and went to the finals last year. And then you have the Giants who won 3 World Series during the decade. The A's are good at baseball right now. And then San Jose Sharks went to the finals and have been finals contenders for years now. So again, the Bay Area is a lot bigger. There's a lot more teams to root for, and you kind of have Oakland, San Francisco level, and then you have teams out in the suburbs, like all the way out in San Jose and Santa Clara. So there's those different factors. So the Bay Area has a lot more teams to root for, and then you have more colleges. You have Stanford, Cal. So in terms of championships, the Bay Area has won its fair share of championships and championship appearance as well. So if you want to pick a sports town that needs a championship more, it's definitely Kansas City. So that was kind of interesting to mention there. So here's an article. It was written by Tim Allen. He was comparing Gronk to George Kittle, and they were mentioned as well. I mean, they're the 2 best tight ends in the NFL right now. So this is a quote from Gronkowski. Quote, "I see a little bit of both in me." Let me start over. "I see a little bit of me in both. But I would say I'm definitely more Kittle, hands down," Gronkowski said. "I would say this because of the attitude that he brings to the table, just the grit he brings into the trenches. He wants to bring it every time. He wants to be that guy, that fierce out there, just wrecking guys wherever, whether it's the passing game or the running game." So yes, I've seen Gronk play, and many times, and seeing George Kittle, he catches a lot of passes, and he gets high totals of receiving yards. So yes, I do understand the Gronk comparison, and just watching him, it's hard to bring him down, hard to tackle George Kittle. And Kelsey, obviously, both since Kelsey's same type, is going to catch a lot of passes, upwards of 100 a year, and consistently the last 4 years has been the best tight end in football. Is now at close to 400 receptions and over probably 4,000 receiving yards in that span. So yes, you can see both of them. So I can understand that comparison. And Kittle has been in the league just 3 years. And this is a quote from Tony Gonzalez on Travis Kelsey, since again Tony Gonzalez was a great tight end with the Chiefs for a long time. So this is Gonzalez on Kelsey. Quote, "Where I think Kelsey, they use him so much." Gonzalez, the former Cal star, said, "He's such a big part of that offense, with Patrick Mahomes being able to extend the play the way he does. As long as the quarterback can get away from the front 4, I think Kelsey's gonna have a good day." Yes. So that's talking about Kelsey having a good game in the Super Bowl, and again, that was very good caught 3 touchdown passes against the Texans. So that was kind of interesting, reading about the tight end comparisons. Again, you have 2 of the best tight ends in football matching up against each other in the Super Bowl, questioning who has a better day or not. If you had to say, which I may come back to this later on, but I think the smart money right now, based on what happened in the playoffs and just the way that their offensive systems are, since the Niners, they're more run first. They have 2, certainly, that they've shown throughout this playoffs, and even 3 running backs who they can give the ball to, right? So they could run a lot. Are they going to run 50 times a game like they did? Probably not. Where Kelsey, again, running back and running is not really a strength in the Kansas City system. It's really probably the team's biggest weakness. So Kelsey's going to have more yards. So again, if you had to ask who's going to have a better performance, like at least on paper, like what you see in the box score, like receptions, yards, or touchdowns, I would go with Kelsey just based on how the offensive have played. So here's a good story on Mahomes. This was written by Daniel Brown of The Athletic. And this is just what I read. So Patrick Mahomes, I kind of wrote my opinion of what I thought of the article. So Patrick Mahomes gives thanks to Alex Smith. So again, so you think back to his rookie year, Mahomes played behind Smith, and it was really a year to learn. Since nowadays that is quite rare. I mean, you think about quarterbacks being thrown in their rookie years. It is much more common. I mean, think about Daniel Jones, who played pretty much right away. By the time it was October, it was his job. Or Dwayne Haskins was not ready, but basically by mid-season took over as the starter, and Joe Flacco started from opening day. So did Mark Sanchez, and the results have varied. The results are mixed. Sure, Andy Dalton was made it to the playoffs as a rookie quarterback. So again, things can kind of vary on how you look at them, but again, was patient, way behind Smith. Smith had the best year of his career, and then he was traded to the Redskins. It paid off for Mahomes, who passed for over 5,000 yards and 50 touchdowns, won the MVP, and then is in the Super Bowl after that. So Mahomes clearly had the best 2 years of any starter ever. I mean, what I just mentioned. Winning the MVP, and we forget last year, they almost went to the Super Bowl last year, and they did it in this year. And what I thought when they made that draft pick is before Mahomes came in, the Chiefs were a very good team. I mean, they went to the playoffs 4 times in 5 years with Alex Smith. Yet, when they got to the playoffs, they were usually a wild card team. They found a way to win the wild card game. Or they lost the wild card game. In one year, they had a first round bye. 2016, I think they lost it. They lost to the Steelers in kind of a defensive battle, low scoring, kind of field goal duel type game. And with that, they thought, okay, they looked at where they're at. And they had been good for a while, but they were tired of being good. You know, they were ready to be great, so they took a huge risk in the draft, traded up for Mahomes, gave up their first round pick for that year and the next year. Well, it has paid off tremendously. And again, they can win the Super Bowl on Sunday. And with that, flags fly forever. So the question is, how many Super Bowls will they win with Mahomes, since the way Mahomes is, the way the team has played since Mahomes has got them, and they went from a playoff team that made it to the playoffs every year, and they needed a lot of luck to get to a Super Bowl, so they never came anywhere close to now Super Bowl contenders. And the question is, how many Super Bowls, and I know we're getting ahead of ourselves, they haven't won any yet, but the question is, how often are they in the Super Bowl, number one? And the second question is, how many can they win? So that's kind of an interesting point right there. And here's what Mahomes had to say. Quote, "I learned a ton from Alex Smith," Mahomes said. "I attribute a lot of my success, especially so early in my career, to him." So again, he learned from Mahomes. And again, I listened to a podcast, the Peter King podcast, an outstanding podcast. And he was interviewing Andy Reid. And again, and what Reid talked about, and this is all paraphrasing, is, yeah, Alex Smith, and it was also mentioned in the article, Alex Smith, who knew his job was going to be taken over certainly within a year, and that's what it was. I mean, they traded him to the Chiefs after he had the best year of his career. You know, he helped Alex Smith learn, since again, Alex Smith was not self-centered. That's, you know, how the way maybe Brett Favre might have been with Aaron Rodgers, or whatever else some quarterbacks might be of somebody trying to take them over. You know, he helped. You know, he really taught and really helped Mahomes out a lot, and made Mahomes a better player. And clearly, he was ready for that. And this is what Mahomes went on to say as well. "He didn't hold anything back from me," Mahomes said. "He taught me. That's just the type of person he was and is." So again, I kind of mentioned that there. So what Mahomes said is, really didn't take anything away, and was just there from the whole time. And obviously, Mahomes seems like he really appreciates the help Alex Smith gave him. And here's another quote I want to read from what Alex Smith said. "I know for sure that mentally I'm better," Mahomes said. "The fact that I'm able to recognize coverages and protections faster means I am able to get us to the best play. Obviously, the numbers weren't the same as last year. It's hard to put these numbers up, but I thought as a team we found ways to win in a better way. And I think that is correct, yes. So Mahomes obviously feels like he's a better player. I mean, if you look at the numbers, right, his passing yardage, so yards per game, is way down. His touchdowns per game, obviously way down. He played in 2 fewer games, yet his passing touchdown total's about half of what it was. So when he says they found ways to win games in better ways, you know what it is? Their defense is much better than it was a year ago. It has become a strength and not a weakness for them. So yes, so if Mahomes thinks he's a better player than he was a year ago, which again with us on paper we don't know he's not better. In fact, he's regressed. Well, I think just how Mahomes sees the game is he's a better player, and the question is, I don't think it's all about numbers and stuff of how good of a player they are. I don't think they indicate things since plenty of quarterbacks had more passing yardage than Mahomes. I mean, you want to look at, I think all the league leaders in passing missed the playoffs this year. The top five. I mean, I have to look at that again, but I'm very sure that that's the case. So again, that's the case right there. So yes, so now they're the better team. So again, I thought that was very interesting to read about kind of what Mahomes had to say. And here's an article I want to mention on Richard Sherman. There are no quotes from this. I just kind of want to summarize what I saw. I did not take any quotes. This was written by David Lombardi. So it was kind of interesting things that I thought was interesting. He played in the same stadium in the Orange Bowl. Back in January 2011, he was at Stanford, and it's kind of funny. He was on a 1-11 Stanford team in 2006. I have heard of that. So basically, played with Coach Harbaugh for 4 years, and then kind of talking about the Legion of Boom formed in summer of 2011 at a lake house. He was kind of with Earl Thomas. They're all really young, and Cam Chancellor. And obviously, he's back in the Super Bowl with the 49ers. Yep, was with the Seahawks for 2 years when they won the Super Bowl. The team where the Niners used to be a big rivalry, and is about 2 years removed from the torn Achilles, coming off that. So when Sherman had that injury, then went to the 49ers, which when he first signed with the Niners, I didn't know what to think of that. Since again, the Niners were this rebuilding franchise, and now they're in the Super Bowl 2 years later, remembers every interception of his career. And once again, he is one of the elite corners in the NFL. I mean, if you look at all the metrics, he is up there in pretty much every category. I mean, eye test, you can see it, and then you go into the numbers, like what happens is clearly, even if you dig deep into the analytics on Pro Football Focus, it is clear he is the best corner in the NFL still. And he wants to play, here's another interesting fact I found, he wants to play until 2023, then retire, but he wanted to play till 2024, but his wife said 2022, so they compromised on 2023. So again, and also Sherman's kind of underdog, has beat the odds every time, has come back from the Achilles to be in position to win another Super Bowl. So again, very interesting reading about Richard Sherman, kind of learning about his history. Many of the stuff I may have already known, but some of the stuff I didn't know. So thank you to Dave Lombardi for giving me that type of article to read. I really liked it. So now I just want to go through the conference championship games quickly. I'm not going to spend too much time on them. But here's what I'm going to say. So, in that game, AFC first. So, at first it looked like that the Titans were once again going to possibly do the same thing again. And what I noticed what the Titans did is it looked like they passed a lot better. Tannehill had a much better performance passing. Well, Derrick Henry was way down. So obviously that we know what happened. That's why the Titans lost. But they got off to a really good start. From the second play of the game, AJ Brown had a 37-yard reception that got them close to the red zone, and they kicked the field goal on the first drive, and the Chiefs went 3-and-out. So obviously there's a trend of what's going on, and then on the second drive, Tannehill throws an interception that is overturned. And then Derrick Henry, once again, off to a really good start on that drive. Had some nice runs. 2 carries, 21 yards to start the drive. Adam Humphries catches a 4th and 2 to convert a first down. And then Derrick Henry rushes for a 4-yard touchdown. So it's 10-0 Titans. And I think this would be really good to talk about in the Super Bowl. The Chiefs once again had to play from behind. And they're down 10-0, 4th and 2 in the red zone. Travis Kelce catches a short pass to convert, so then it's 10-0 when it was 10-0, and then Tyreek Hill catches a jet sweep for a touchdown at the end of the first quarter, and also caught a 26-yard pass early in the game. So they're starting to run. So they're starting to move the ball better at that point in time. And then Ryan Tannehill already over 100 yards passing by the start of the second quarter. He failed to pass for 100 yards in the previous two playoff games, which was very bizarre. Again, the kind of two bizarre games that the Titans won that if I feel like if they played the game again, they wouldn't have, especially against the Ravens. And here's a bad penalty. So the Chiefs got kind of sloppy, 3rd and 22. That resulted in a first down, committed pass interference. So the Titans had kind of a 15-play, took about 9 minutes, 75 yards. And of all people, a lineman. So they had a 17-7 lead. So once again, I mean, at that point in time, so I'm going to say this. Did I really think that the Titans were going to win? I mean, it was definitely close for a while. I mean, I thought they had opportunities to win the game, certainly early, and then basically the Chiefs, you know how they responded. They had a quick moving drive to move the ball very quickly. Demetrius Robinson caught a 24-yard pass kind of at the beginning of the drive, and then Tyreek Hill 20-yard touchdown pass. So all of a sudden, right before the 2-minute warning, and they put together a really good scoring drive, and they get the ball back, they're on 14 right after the 2-minute warning. They basically go down the field again. Travis Kelce, the key thing was he converted a 3rd and 4 that got them into the Titans territory, and really the defining play of the game, the whole turning point of the game. Since the Titans still had the lead at the time, and they could have gone into the halftime break with the lead, 1.5 away from going to the Super Bowl. You know what happened? Mahomes took off, and he had that run down the sideline. They thought he was going to get out of the bounce. Oh, they're going to tackle him. Eventually never did. And he also had a key run earlier in the drive. So Mahomes has really used his legs really well in the playoffs. I mean, running has been a strength of his in the playoffs. And that run right there gave them the lead. And all of a sudden the Titans really didn't recover. I mean, the third quarter, not much happened. But towards the end of the third quarter, that goes into the fourth. To put together a 7-minute drive. It was mostly Damian Williams just having short, steady runs, and then he had a touchdown run at 3 yards, and all of a sudden it was a 28-17, and then about midway through the fourth quarter, Sammy Watkins catches a deep touchdown pass of 60 yards. It gives the Chiefs a 35-17 lead, and Mahomes made a really nice throw, 28 unanswered points, and sure, the Titans scored another touchdown, but that was pretty much it right there. So again, what I have observed from the Chiefs' this playoffs is they have started slow, both games. They really should have lost to the Texans, but it was really a very strange game. Just special teams in that game were awful. I mean, the Chiefs should have never fallen behind 24-0, and the Texans really shouldn't have blown a 24-0 lead, but just they end up scoring 51, right? Well, in this game, they end up scoring 35. The final score ended up being 35-24, and Mahomes 294 yards, 3 touchdowns, threw 5 touchdowns in the previous game, so he has a really hot hand going into the Super Bowl with 8 touchdown passes over 600 passing yards in the playoffs. In addition, has over 100 yards rushing, leads the Chiefs in rushing, which that tells you that rushing is a weakness for them. So in the game total, the Chiefs had 404 total yards, Titans 295, but for the longest time, the Titans failed to do anything in terms of moving the ball. And here's another stat. Chiefs had 112 rushing yards, the Titans had 85. Derrick Henry, 65 rushing yards on 19 carries. Again, earlier point of the game, I remember he had 9 carries for 45 yards. So Henry was out was clearly that energy. So again, the Titans game that they played against the Patriots, just give the ball to Derrick Henry. Same thing against the Ravens, and just let the defense do the rest. Or not even that. It was basically Derrick Henry. Now, and you go back to the regular season. I mean, Henry's getting the ball constantly, right? I mean, he's getting the ball 20, 30 times a game. And basically, Derrick Henry, he's the biggest reason why they went to the playoffs, and he's going to cost a lot of money to re-sign. The question is, do you franchise tag? Or I think you just have to pay him and Daniel, both very important pieces, to that Cinderella run that they went on. So again, the Chiefs managed to beat the Titans. They figured out the Titans, and really, their formula was very simple. They just gave the ball to Derrick Henry. They didn't do anything tricky. Their defense just made a lot of plays, especially against the Ravens, despite the Ravens moving the ball well. And so that's there. So now I want to go to the NFC Championship game. So the player of that game is Raheem Mostert. So Mostert had a 36-yard touchdown run, and Deebo Samuel had 46 yards receiving on that drive. That would really be the last time the 49ers would pass at all, since on the next drive, Bosa and Buckner get a third down sack. They have to punt. And then, so when they ended up getting strip sacked, they got the ball at midfield, and they went on to score a field goal. And one of the reasons why Mostert played so well is Tavon Coleman left the game with an arm injury, and went on to be the reason why Mostert got as many carries as he did. So Mostert ends up scoring on a 9-yard touchdown run, 17-0. Packers appear to be moving the ball, and they fumble the snap near the red zone. So again, poor fundamentals, a play that you can't do. And when you finally get back in the game, you manage to make a fundamental mistake that you really shouldn't make at all. And then first half, Emmanuel Mosley intercepts the pass. By that point, it's 20. It is 20-0 at that point in time. And then Mostert with another run, 19 yards. And, they do move the ball a little better in the second half. At that point, it's too little too late. And they go on to win. Sure, Davante Adams had a nice 65-yard touchdown when the game was out of reach, or 65-yard reception, just a deep pass. But at the end of the day, that didn't matter. And then Sherman basically got an interception to seal the game in a last-ditch effort by the Packers. So startling numbers for you. Jimmy G just 6 for 8, 77 passing yards, and threw only 2 passes in the second half. So again, we talked about that first drive, how, okay, look at them passing. Since, here's the thing, Jimmy G has not been needed. Number one, the games weren't particularly close. And number two, the running game was going so well. We talked about the Vikings game. They just ran, they just had a bunch of steady 5 to 7 yard runs pretty much all game against the Vikings. Well, here, their running formula works. Once they start running and it goes well for them, they're not going to stop running. And that's been the case this playoffs. And Raheem Mostert, 29 carries, 229 yards and 4 touchdowns. And once again, they had 42 rushing attempts compared to just 8 passing attempts. So in 50 total offensive plays, they ran 5 times more than they passed, which is completely old school. And that's what they did. So if you want to, now I'm going to look at both teams. So if you want to do advantage, so in terms of coaching, Andy Reid versus Kyle Shanahan. Andy Reid, longtime Eagles coach, now coaching in the Super Bowl for the first time in 15 years, getting a second shot, I hope. And many people want Andy Reid to win the Super Bowl. I'm not saying I'm rooting for the Chiefs, but if I saw Andy Reid win a Super Bowl, I think that would be great to see. Just has been coaching for so long, has coached in so many playoff games. That would be nice to see. And two things in terms of coordinator matchup, since it's offense versus defense, Eric Bieniemy, who's been the mastermind of this offense, and would be the third head coach under the Reid era to become a head coordinator, offensive coordinator. Obviously, Doug Peterson, Philadelphia won a Super Bowl 2 years ago. And then you have Matt Nagy, who went on to Chicago, and they look very good his first year. So again, for Bieniemy not to be a head coach is shocking. I honestly thought he was going to Cleveland. I thought for sure he would be a head coach. I heard him linked to the Redskins. Heard a lot of rumors of that early on. Was not hired. I am shocked, considering 2 great offensive years. I don't get it. I don't understand it. Should have been a head coach really a year ago. Should be getting ready to coach it. That doesn't make any sense. Robert Saleh, who is a outstanding offensive coordinator, kind of interesting reading about him today. I've read it twice now. A really good Sports Illustrated article about him not long after he was hired by the Niners. Was in Seattle when they won the Super Bowl. Was like a quality control coach, I believe, at the time, and just a very good story. Kind of from Michigan, started coaching in Michigan. Very fascinating. I don't get why Saleh's not a head coach either. Both of these coordinators should be head coaches, but they're not, and I think will be after next year. Not only that, you hear about the Rooney Rule. There are 2 minority candidates: Eric Bieniemy, African American, and Robert Saleh, Middle Eastern descent. So the point is, you have one of the best defenses in the league against the best, one of the best offenses. At times, it looked like an explosive offense, and in the playoffs, it has looked like that again. So when it comes to quarterback, that's obvious. Even in the regular season, that was the case. I mean, and clearly the eye test. Sure, Mahomes is a much bigger sample size than when we talked about George Kittle and Travis Kelce at the top of the show, comparing them. And you know why Mahomes passed for 600 yards and 8 touchdowns, and Jimmy G threw only 8 passes the last game? Well, since the Chiefs need Mahomes to win, and they had to play from behind, so obviously they were passing more. They needed to pass a lot more. Where the Niners, once they got comfortable with the run and just playing so far ahead, they just ran and didn't stop. And in addition, so again, his regular season numbers are down, sure, but they're on an 8-game winning streak. And now Mahomes is dominating the playoffs. Where Jimmy G, he's not been needed. I mean, what has Jimmy G done this playoffs? Handed the ball off to Raheem Mostert and to Tevin Coleman for the most part. He has not been needed since the defense for the 49ers has been so good. So if you think about Jimmy G as the quarterback in the playoffs, in the Super Bowl team, I mean, if you want to think about productivity of a quarterback in the Super Bowl, like in the playoffs, I mean, and again, this is not Jimmy G's fault at all. Wasn't needed, was not really called on to perform. But if you think about trying to think, since again being on air now, we don't want to spend 5 minutes thinking about it. But from what I remember, least productive quarterback in the playoffs going into the Super Bowl, probably Peyton Manning in 2015. Since again, relying on defense, had a really good defense to play behind them, and they just moved the ball well enough to win. That is it right there. Right, since the Falcons, obviously Brady and Ryan were great going into the Super Bowl. Obviously Brady and Foles, and then Brady and Goff, right? So that's what I think, and then I have to dig back even further to find another quarterback that really wasn't needed much to win them the game. So that's the story right there. I don't care if Jimmy G put up the same numbers as Mahomes. Mahomes is clearly better than Jimmy G, and will probably have a better game unless the Niners defense completely is just turns on the switch and is dominant like they were kind of in October. So running back now, passing is clearly the Chiefs. Running back, it's the Niners. I mean, you saw what Mostert did, you saw what Coleman did, and really throughout the season. You had three running backs that each got about 130 carries or so for right around 600, 700 yards. So again, when they do run the ball, they're efficient. I mean, you want to look at league leaders in yards per carry. I think multiple 49ers are near the top of the list at over 5 per game. While the Chiefs, they have basically two running backs. LaShawn McCoy, who has been a healthy scratch down the stretch, has done almost nothing. And Damian Williams. So and in the playoffs, Williams, they give him the ball a fair amount and really doesn't do much running. Seems more of a pass catching back. So Williams has contributed, but they don't really have a running back, so that's why Mahomes had to take over and run. Anything against the defensive line, Mahomes will run for 50 yards again? Probably not. So again, when it comes to running, 49ers with the advantage. So receiving, it's hard to say. I think Mahomes might have some more run. I mean, Emmanuel Sanders has had some good moments for sure. Has been really productive for them. Deebo Samuel's looked explosive too at times in the playoffs. Again, when called upon. So again, when you want to look at a production of the 49ers receivers against the Chiefs receivers in the playoffs, it's not close for those very reasons. I mean, why did Jimmy G throw 8 passes? Their running was spectacular, right? So it's in some ways it is kind of unfair to compare them, but if you want to do receiving core, again, having Travis Kelce, 2 really good tight ends. Again, Kelce much better in the playoffs than Kittle. Not Kittle's fault, obviously. So look at that. Titans, it's even. I'm going to say Mahomes, I think, might have slightly more weapons. I mean, I think their offense is just really, in general, it's more explosive. So obviously Mahomes, with the Chiefs having the better offense outside of the running game, it's on them. The line, Mahomes is sacked at a very low rate. So obviously, you want to look at a Pro Football Focus, you dig deep into the metrics of their offensive linemen. Sure, they may not have the highest ratings. Sure, they're not like the Cowboys linemen or what the Eagles were a few years ago, but their line is very good. I mean, Mahomes was sacked only 17 times in about 14 games. That's a little over a sack a game, and the protection has been great this playoffs. I mean, I can't recall Mahomes getting sacked too much. I would have noticed it, right? So their line's very good. And Jimmy G was sacked a lot more in the regular season. But think about how good their running game is, right? You have to have a good offensive line to have good running. I mean, they have the second best running game other than the Baltimore Ravens. And think about how dominant their running has been. I mean, it's been defense and running, kind of old school football, why they won in the playoffs. So both of their lines I'd say are good, but I think the Chiefs is better since they're better at protecting the quarterback, which most of the time that's more important than not. I mean, how well will Jimmy G do when he has to pass a lot like he did in the regular season? So in offense overall, what I said was running through. Quarterback, obviously the Chiefs. Running back, Niners, but in terms of line, Chiefs, receiving Chiefs. So offense, obviously it's going to be the Kansas City Chiefs. Defense, and that's clear. Obviously, it's going to be the Niners in terms of defensive lines, but this may be the best defensive line in the NFL. I mean, you think about all their options. I mean, you think about Bosa, may win Defensive Rookie of the Year, double-digit sacks. Armstead, one of the best defensive tackles, and right around 10 sacks. Dee Ford, when he's healthy, he's one of the better pass rushers in the league. Not to mention DeForest Buckner, who really emerged in the 4th year in the league. So you have 4 really good defensive linemen right there. And the Chiefs, not quite the same. Sure, they tried to get Frank Clark from Seattle. His production dropped. Sure, Chris Jones has been hurt down the stretch. He went on, I think he had like a 10-game sack streak back in 2018. They are just getting him back. But in terms of defensive line, I mean, you go through the Pro Football metrics, and you look at the numbers, right? You did dig deep, like into the metrics, in the analytics. It's like you look at the stuff, you don't watch a game, you know the 49ers defensive line is better. In terms of linebackers, it's kind of interesting reading about it. I mean, going through Pro Football Focus and just watching, like you look at the snap counts and stuff. the Chiefs really don't have a full-time linebacker that is going to play every down. I mean, I think it depends on the situation. But they do not have like that type of guy that the Niners have. Say a Fred Warner type who's going to play every snap, who can get 100 plus tackles. And again, I think tackles are kind of hard to measure. You know, they don't mean how good or bad of a year you had. I mean, clearly, I think. But again, they don't have that high level linebacker that, say, other teams may have, right? So obviously, the Niners, I think they get more out of their linebackers. I think they have, and obviously, their defense is better too. And that's more their strength. So, in terms of secondary, so obviously, you have Richard Sherman, who is the best cornerback in the NFL, which is very hard to throw his way. Since if you look at, you go to Pro Football Focus, is rated number one in that type of metric. And then, obviously, you look at how many yards receiving was against him, very low. So either way, no one wants to throw it to Richard Sherman, since when you do, he's gotten 2 interceptions in this playoffs. So really look to the right side, the opposite side, which is, again, I think the weakest moment for the 49ers in this playoffs was that drive the Vikings had, or I think it was Adam Thielen and Diggs. Or I think it was Stephon Diggs ended up having that 40-yard touchdown. That is when they attacked that side of the field. And so that was kind of their biggest weakness right then and there. And then in terms of the Chiefs, again, they don't have anyone close to the level of Sherman. I think they have 2 good cornerbacks, Bashaud Breeland, former Redskin, and then they have Ward, who something like Jadavius Ward is last name. I probably haven't gotten that first name. Pardon me, but so you have Ward and Breeland. Ward is kind of turned out as an undrafted free agent. Really emerged this year as a starter. So again, in terms of Pro Football rankings, like overall, their ratings aren't that high. But when you look at other things like passer rating on Pro Football Focus, look at numbers like that. It turns out they are good corners. I think they have 2 good corners instead of 1 great corner, and then 2 okay corners. I think it's Witherspoon and Mosley, who have, I think one has been benched for the other down the stretch, and that's what happened against the Vikings. So again, that side of the field, and again, you go back to the conference championship game. Obviously, Davante Adams had that 65-yard touchdown or reception on Richard Sherman. So again, Sherman may not be the best in deep coverage. But then again, Sherman did get an interception on a deep pass late in the game. But you look at Davante Adams' numbers, almost all of his targets were against kind of that right side of the field. And looking at the playoffs, the right side seems to be exposed more and more in the regular season, obviously, since no one wants to throw it to Sherman. So when it comes to guys like Tyreek Hill or whatever, do you put them over on that right side and expose it? I mean, do they just throw basically on that right side of the field? I think that's what the Chiefs need to do. So advantage 49ers having Richard Sherman basically taking away the side of the field. Safety, Tyrann Mathieu played all-pro level. I mean, I kind of watched him down the stretch. How he played was just slot corner. Seems to be very good in coverage as well. He's really making plays all over the field. Really looked good down the stretch. Jimmy Ward on the Niners rated high, very good in coverage. And I think it was also rated high in run defense. So again, at a high rating, was the top 10 safety according to Pro Football Focus. I think even closer to top 5 even than top 10. So again, you have that. So you have 2 really good safeties. Yet one weakness for the Chiefs that they're trying to unplug is Juan Thornwell is missing, who had a very good rookie year. but then went down. His season ended back in week 17. So again, but I'd say advantage 49ers. It doesn't matter. So with those reasons, so you look at the teams for sure. So I just went through them. Obviously, the Chiefs have the better offense, and the Niners have the better defense. So what's going to happen? Since with the 49ers down the stretch going into the playoffs, kind of want to go through that now. They played in a bunch of close and mostly high-scoring games. You think about how they played against the Rams in Week 16, and then against the Seahawks. The Seahawks could move the ball against them. The Seahawks beat them back in Week 10 in the middle of the regular season. So you looked at those factors, right? And obviously, the teams could beat their defense, right? Teams beat their defense. So now the question is, can the Chiefs do it? Since I think the biggest example was that shootout they had with the Saints back in New Orleans that they managed to win. I think it was 48-46, right? So that was one time their defense was exposed. And it turns out when they had that dominant stretch in October against really weaker offenses, sure they shut down a Browns team. Those offense looked good at times this year with Odell and Jarvis Landry. So here's the thing. They're not going to be October, but they're not going to be what they were in December either. Since down the stretch, obviously the Chiefs had a better defense. But when it came time to playoff time, I mean, the Texans moved the ball against them fairly well, and sure they made a lot of mistakes. And the Titans did at times, and then their defense really started from about midway through the second quarter, really in the third quarter, most of that fourth quarter, other than that Titans had that one touchdown drive when it was too little too late, they shut down the Titans. So when I look at playoff performances, obviously the Niners defense is better. And when you don't look at all the mental mistakes the Chiefs made, I thought their defense played fairly well against the Texans in general. So again, who wins? So what could be the Chiefs' weakness of how they lose? Well, here's what has happened. They have had to play from behind at times in this playoffs. Right? They were down 24-0 against the Texans. Obviously, it shouldn't have been 24-0. Obviously, the Texans shouldn't have blown a 24-0. But they found a way to win, since when they could just regroup and refocus, the offense just took over, and they're pretty much unstoppable. And they were. Against the Titans, they're down 10-0 and 17-7. Kind of late in the second quarter, quick drive, touchdown, stop, another quick drive. And then they put together another long drive in the third quarter, and then that 60-yard touch. So, again, they have played from behind. Now, against the 49ers, if they play from behind, you think about how good their defense has been. You say in the playoffs, and when they played from behind against the Niners, like let's say against the Vikings, they're ahead, right? The Vikings really didn't have a shot of coming back, and neither did the Packers, since the Packers made so many mistakes, right? So if you turn the ball over against the 49ers, that is going to take you out of the game. So let's say, Jimmy G has a first good drive. They get a stop. And then, let's say another good drive. And then, a turnover is forced. So you're down 10-0 or 14-0. So let's just say the Chiefs get down by more than one score. Do they come back from that? I mean, it's against the Niners. Again, the 49ers have a much better defense than what the Texans did. In fact, the Texans, they had terrible passing defense and really a bad defense in general. So the Chiefs could just run all over the Texans, really, when they could regroup and really catch their breath, right? Since with all the turnovers the Texans committed and how bad they were on special teams, I think it was in a very short span that the game went from a blowout to the Chiefs basically ahead. And then the Chiefs turned into a blowout themselves, right? Where against the Titans, they were just kind of playing from behind and they took over. But against this Niners team, I mean, sure, down the stretch, the Niners were in close down the wire games. Has not been the case. Just they're trying to look at recent trends. If they're down 14 points or 10 points or even 17 points or whatever, are they going to come back and win? Probably not. So the question is, are we going to see a shootout? No, I don't think we're going to see a shootout. I think the Niners defense is too good. Now, the reason why I bring that up is what happened with the Saints and their defense down the stretch. Is it going to be a defensive battle? No, probably not. I think the Chiefs' defense is not, again, running defense is one of their biggest weaknesses as well. They can't run and they can't defend the run, despite their defense overall being very good. I think it's more on the passing end. So, I think the 49ers are going to run a lot. Here's an interesting question. Are the 49ers going to have more rushing attempts, or is Mahomes going to have more passing attempts? That will be interesting to see. I would think Mahomes will have more passing attempts since Jimmy G's going to have to throw more. I mean, can the 49ers win a Super Bowl with Jimmy G throwing 10 or fewer passes and 100 or fewer yards? And do you give the Super Bowl MVP to somebody like Raheem Mostert or Tavon Coleman? If they continue to play the way they do and win, that's what could happen. Or you give it to Mahomes if they win. So again, in terms of picking who is winning, I was thinking about this all week. Right? Sometimes it is pretty easy to make a prediction, right? Well, right now, I'm having a hard time picking, but at the end of the day, it is the Chiefs. Sure, the Niners defense is great. But then again, the Chiefs found a way to beat a really good Patriots defense back in Week 14. Now, granted, the 49ers offense is much more efficient than what the Patriots offense is and was at the time. But still, I think Mahomes will find a way. He's going to play well enough to win. And sure, the 49ers will try to run the ball. It's going to be close. I think you'll see defensive moments for sure. I think this game will be similar to what the Titans game was. They're not going to score as many points. So if the Chiefs don't fall behind and can find a way to take the lead, they're going to win. If the 49ers manage to take a lead of anywhere from 10 points or more, they're going to win. But in the day, Mahomes has really never been... I can never really recall a time where Mahomes has been shut down. Certainly not by an elite level defense, and certainly not in the playoffs. Mahomes is a great playoff performer. So in terms of more momentum, I think the Niners might have more momentum, both. And obviously, so it's hard to pick, but you know what? I'm going to pick the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl, and Mahomes is going to be the MVP. Is going to find a way to beat the Niners defense. Since the way the Niners have been playing, they're up against a much better offense than what the Packers were and what the Vikings were. While the Chiefs are up against a much better defense that they've seen. So again, two forces collide, but the Chiefs are going to win the Super Bowl. That is my prediction. I have picked the Chiefs, so the Chiefs are Super Bowl 54 champions. And that ends this episode. Thank you for listening, and we will come back on Monday and we'll recap the Super Bowl.